I stood in the doorway of my son's backyard, watching 75 guests laugh and toast champagne glasses under strings of Edison lights, and realized that not a single person in that crowd knew I existed. My son Marcus had promised me 6 months ago, with tears in his eyes and his hand on mine, that I would never have to worry about being alone again. "We'll take care of you, Mom," he'd said. Always. Yet here I was 73 years old, standing in the shadows of his surprise 40th birthday party, the party I'd secretly planned and paid for with my entire life savings, and I wasn't even invited to attend. The caterer I'd hired walked past me without recognition, carrying a tray of the stuffed mushrooms I'd specifically requested because they were Marcus's favorite. The jazz quartet I'd booked played softly in the corner, their melody drifting through the warm September evening. And there, at the center of it all, stood my son with his arm around his wife Vanessa, accepting congratulations and gifts, basking in what everyone believed was her brilliant planning. Nobody knew the truth. Nobody except me and Vanessa. I'd spent 47 years building a life that revolved around my children. After my husband died when Marcus was only 8 and his sister Elena was 6, I worked 3 jobs to keep them in good schools, to afford soccer uniforms and piano lessons, to make sure they never felt the weight of our loss the way I did. I sewed my own clothes so they could wear new ones. I ate leftovers so they could have fresh meals. When Marcus got into state university, I took out a second mortgage on our house to help with expenses his scholarship didn't cover. When Elena wanted to study abroad, I cashed in my retirement account early, penalties and all. I never asked for anything in return. That's not why you raise children. You raise them because you love them, because they're your purpose, your legacy. You sacrifice because that's what parents do. And when they grow up and succeed, their happiness becomes yours. That's what I believed. That's what I told myself every time I felt the arthritis in my hands after a double shift at the diner, or when I calculated how many years I'd need to work before I could finally rest. Marcus became a successful commercial real estate broker. He married Vanessa, a corporate lawyer with sharp features and sharper ambition. They bought a beautiful 4-bedroom house in the suburbs with a pool and a 3-car garage. Elena became a traveling nurse, sending postcards from different cities every few months but rarely visiting. I was proud of them both. I'd done what I set out to do, given them better lives than I'd had. But as I got older, the sacrifices started to feel heavier. My little house, the one I'd raised them in, began falling apart in ways I couldn't fix on my pension. The roof leaked. The furnace rattled ominously every winter. The steps to the front porch had rotted through, and I'd nearly fallen twice. I was working part-time at the library just to cover utilities and groceries, my Social Security barely enough to keep me afloat. Last March, on my 73rd birthday, Marcus came to visit. It was the first time he'd been to my house in almost a year, and I saw him notice things: the bucket-catching drips in the hallway, the space heater I was using because the furnace had finally died, the peeling wallpaper in the kitchen. His face fell. "Mom," he'd said, "why didn't you tell me things were this bad?" I tried to brush it off. "I'm managing. You have your own family to worry about." He'd taken my hand then, squeezed it tight. His eyes were wet. "You're my family too. You've done everything for us your whole life. Let us take care of you now. Please." That's when he suggested I move in with them. "We have that guest suite on the first floor," he'd said. "It's got its own bathroom, sitting room, everything. You'd have your privacy, but you'd be with family. Vanessa and I already discussed it. We want this, Mom. We want you there." I'd been so moved I'd cried. To not be alone anymore, to not worry about every little repair, to be near my son and my 2 grandchildren, Emma, who was 12, and little Joshua, who was 7, it sounded like a dream. I accepted. But Vanessa's face when Marcus told her I'd said yes should have been my first warning. We were all having dinner at their house, a rare family gathering. Marcus had made the announcement with a big smile, and Vanessa's expression had frozen. Just for a second, but I'd seen it. A flash of something cold and calculating before she rearranged her features into a smile. "That's wonderful," she'd said, her voice tight. "When were you thinking, Judith?" "Oh, whenever is convenient," I'd replied quickly. "I don't want to be any trouble." "You could never be trouble, Mom," Marcus had insisted. He'd looked so happy, so earnest. "Let's plan for May. That gives us time to freshen up the suite. Make sure everything's perfect for you." May came and went. Every time I called to ask about moving, there was an excuse. The painters weren't finished. They'd found some mold that needed to be remediated. The bathroom fixtures they'd ordered were backordered. June became July, July became August. My roof leak got worse. The library cut my hours. I was eating one meal a day to stretch my budget, but I told myself it would be okay. Marcus had promised. He'd take care of me. Then in late August, I'd been at the grocery store and ran into Cheryl, Vanessa's sister-in-law. She was friendly, always had been. We'd chatted about the weather, the price of tomatoes, and then she'd said, "I'm so excited about Marcus's party. Vanessa's been planning it for months. It's going to be incredible." My heart had stuttered. Party. His 40th birthday party, Cheryl had said. September 21st. Didn't you get your invitation yet? Maybe it's coming. I got mine last week. I'd smiled and made an excuse to leave quickly. When I got to my car, I'd sat there in the parking lot, hands shaking. Marcus's birthday wasn't until September 28th. I'd been planning to bake him his favorite carrot cake, the one I'd made every year since he was 4. But a party? A big party? He hadn't mentioned anything. That evening I'd called him. "Hi, sweetheart." Cheryl mentioned something about a birthday party. There was a pause. "Oh yeah, Vanessa wanted to do something. It's not a big deal." "When is it?" Another pause. "The 21st. It's on a Saturday, easier for people to come." "I'd love to help," I'd said. "I could make some of my appetizers or help with decorations or—" "No, Mom, you don't need to do anything. Vanessa's got it covered. You just worry about getting rest, okay? We'll celebrate your birthday too once you're settled here." But something in his tone felt off. Distant. I'd hung up feeling a knot of anxiety in my stomach. The next day I'd done something I wasn't proud of. I called the house when I knew Marcus would be at work. Vanessa answered on the third ring. "Hi, Vanessa. It's Judith. I was just calling to see if I could help with the party. I know you're busy with work, and I'd love to contribute." "That's sweet, Judith, but I've got everything handled." Her voice was professionally polite, the way she probably talked to clients. "Oh, okay. I'm so excited to celebrate with Marcus. He works so hard, he deserves a special night." Silence. "Vanessa." "Judith, the thing is, it's a sophisticated event. Mostly Marcus's colleagues and clients. Catered, a jazz quartet, really elegant. I think you might feel out of place." The words hit like a slap. Out of place. "I just mean it's not your usual kind of gathering. Very formal. And honestly, with the move still pending, I thought it might be better to keep things simple for now." "You understand." I understood perfectly. I wasn't invited to my own son's birthday party. The son I'd sacrificed everything for. The man I'd raised to be kind and generous. His wife had decided I wasn't good enough to attend his celebration. "Does Marcus know you're not inviting me?" I asked quietly. "Marcus knows it's a work event," she'd said, not really answering the question. "I have to run, Judith. I have a conference call in 5 minutes." She'd hung up before I could respond. I'd sat there with the phone in my hand, feeling something harden inside me. All these years I'd been patient with Vanessa. She'd never been warm to me, but I'd told myself she was just reserved, just focused on her career. I'd made excuses when she forgot my birthday, when she booked family vacations during holidays so I couldn't see my grandchildren, when she subtly corrected the way I did things in her home. I told myself it didn't matter, that Marcus loved me, that was enough. But this was different. This was a line crossed. That night I'd lain awake thinking. And by morning I'd made a decision. If Vanessa wanted to take credit for a sophisticated party, I'd give her one. The most incredible 40th birthday party anyone had ever seen. And then I'd make sure everyone knew exactly who had made it happen. I'd gone to my bank the next day and withdrawn my entire savings account. $23,000. It was everything I had left in the world. The money I'd been saving for emergencies, for my own future care, for the burial plot I'd already picked out. It was supposed to last me the rest of my life. But what good was money if I had to spend my final years alone and unwanted? I'd hired the best caterer in town, the one I'd read about in the local magazine. I'd booked Moonlight Strings, the jazz quartet that charged $3,000 for a 4-hour event. I'd ordered custom decorations in navy and gold, Marcus's favorite colors. I'd arranged for a bartender, a professional photographer, even valet parking. The caterer had asked me 3 times if I was sure about the budget, and I'd said yes every time. But here was the crucial part. I'd done it all in Vanessa's name. When the vendors asked who was booking, I'd said, "I'm calling on behalf of Vanessa Thorne. She's planning her husband's 40th birthday party." I'd given them her phone number for confirmations, her email for contracts. As far as everyone knew, she was the generous, thoughtful wife who'd spared no expense for her husband's milestone birthday. I'd sent the invitations too, 75 of them, addressed to Marcus's friends, colleagues, and extended family. Elegant cardstock with embossed lettering. Join us in celebrating Marcus Thorne's 40th birthday. Hosted by Vanessa Thorne. I deliberately left my address off the return label and used a P.O. box instead. The only person I'd told about any of it was my neighbor Dorothy, who'd been my friend for 30 years. She'd looked at me with wide eyes when I explained what I was doing. "Judith, that's your entire savings." "I know. What if this doesn't work? What if it makes things worse? Then at least I'll know I tried. At least I'll know what I'm worth to him." Dorothy had hugged me. "You're worth everything, honey. If your son can't see that, shame on him." Now, standing in the shadows of that beautiful party, I watched Vanessa accept compliments from guests. "You've outdone yourself, Vanessa," one woman said. "This is absolutely stunning. You must have been planning this for months." Vanessa smiled, but it looked strained. "Well, I wanted it to be special." "You're such a wonderful wife," another guest gushed. "Marcus is a lucky man." I saw Marcus put his arm around Vanessa's waist, saw him kiss her cheek. "I really am lucky," he said. "She's been working so hard on this." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw a text from an unknown number. "Mrs. Judith Thorne? This is Antoine from Prestige Catering. We have your final invoice ready. The remaining balance of $200 is due at the end of the event. Will you be paying by check or card?" I typed back, "Please send all invoices to Vanessa Thorne at the email address on file." His response was immediate. "Will do. Thank you again for your business. The event is beautiful." I pocketed my phone and took a deep breath. It was time for phase 2. I walked out of the shadows and into the party. Several people turned to look at me, an older woman in a simple dress among all this elegance, but I held my head high. I made my way to the bar and ordered a club soda with lime. The bartender smiled professionally and handed it to me. Then I waited. It didn't take long. Vanessa spotted me from across the yard. I watched her excuse herself from her conversation and walk toward me, her heels clicking sharply on the stone patio. Her face was a mask of forced pleasantness, but her eyes were ice. "Judith," she said when she reached me, "what are you doing here?" "Attending my son's birthday party," I replied calmly. "You weren't invited." "I know. You made that quite clear. But I thought since I paid for everything here, I'd earned the right to attend." The color drained from her face. "What are you talking about?" "The caterer, the band, the decorations, the photographer, the valet service. All of it, Vanessa. I paid for all of it. In your name." She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing. You can't have $23,000, I said softly. My entire life savings. Every penny I had left in this world. I spent it all on this party. That's insane. Why would you? Because my son told me he'd take care of me, and I believed him. Because you told me I wasn't good enough to attend his party. Because I wanted to see what you'd do when everyone thought you were the generous one. I took a sip of my club soda. It's working beautifully, by the way. Everyone's very impressed with you. Vanessa's face had gone from pale to red. "Marcus!" she called out, her voice shrill. Marcus looked over, saw us together, and his smile faltered. He excused himself from his conversation and jogged over. "Mom? You're here. Why didn't you?" "Your mother crashed the party," Vanessa interrupted. "And she's saying crazy things about paying for everything." Marcus looked between us, confused. "What? Mom, what's she talking about?" I met my son's eyes, my beautiful boy, the child I'd sacrificed everything for, and I felt my heart break one more time before I let it harden completely. I'm talking about the fact that you promised to take care of me, Marcus. You looked me in the eye and promised. And then for 6 months all I got was excuses and delays. Your wife told me I wasn't sophisticated enough to attend your birthday party. So I decided to show her just how sophisticated I could be. The jazz quartet was playing Fly Me to the Moon. Guests were still laughing, still eating the stuffed mushrooms and sipping champagne. Nobody knew yet that the perfect evening was built on the ashes of an old woman's savings account. I hired everything here. I continued, my voice steady. The food, the music, the flowers, everything. I used your wife's name so everyone would think she was responsible. And now the bills are coming due, Vanessa. All $8,200 of outstanding balance. Plus the $15,000 I already paid up front. Marcus looked like I'd slapped him. Mom, no. Tell me you didn't. I did. Every penny. Because you said you'd take care of me. And I wanted to believe that meant I mattered to you. That I wasn't just nothing. Vanessa had recovered from her initial shock, and now looked furious. You had no right. You forged my name. I never forged anything, I said calmly. I made phone calls on your behalf. I said I was planning a party for my son-in-law. Which was true. I used your email and phone number for confirmations. All the vendors think you're the client. And all these guests think you're the hostess who put this together. You can't do this, Vanessa hissed. You can't just. Can't what? Spend my own money? Because that's all I did, Vanessa. I spent every dollar I had saved for my old age, for my care, for my funeral, on giving my son the party he deserved. The party you wanted everyone to think you gave him. A few nearby guests had started to notice our tense conversation. They moved closer, pretending to get drinks but clearly listening. Marcus ran his hand through his hair. Mom, this is... God, why would you do this? I would have helped you. I told you I wanted you to move in. You told me that in March, Marcus. It's September. I've been living in a house with a leaking roof and no heat, eating 1 meal a day, waiting for you to follow through on your promise. And all that time, your wife was planning this party and telling me I wasn't good enough to attend it. That's not what I said, Vanessa snapped. You said it would be sophisticated and I'd feel out of place. What would you call that? Marcus turned to his wife. Vanessa, you didn't actually tell her she couldn't come? Vanessa's jaw tightened. I said it was primarily a professional event. I thought it would be more comfortable for her. You thought it would be more comfortable to exclude me from my own son's birthday? I asked. Or you thought I'd be an embarrassment? The guests weren't even pretending not to listen anymore. A small crowd had gathered. I saw Cheryl with her hand over her mouth, looking horrified. I saw Marcus's colleague Dan, who'd helped him get his first big real estate deal, shaking his head. Marcus looked devastated. Mom, I swear I didn't know. She told me you weren't feeling well, that you'd send your regards. That was the moment I'd been waiting for. That was the moment everything crystallized. She lied to you, I said simply. Just like she's been lying about the renovations on the guest suite. There is no mold, Marcus. There's no backorder on fixtures. I drove by here last month and saw the suite. It's being used as Vanessa's home office. There are law books on shelves and a desk by the window. She never intended to let me move in. The silence that fell was deafening. Even the jazz quartet had finished their song and hadn't started another. Everyone was staring at us now. Marcus turned slowly to face his wife. Vanessa. She lifted her chin defiantly. We need that space. I'm making partner next year, and I need a proper home office. I was going to talk to you about it. You told me the renovations weren't done. You told me you were working on it. You've been telling me that for 6 months. Because I knew you wouldn't understand. You never understand that my career matters too, that I can't just... This isn't about your career, Marcus said, and his voice was shaking. This is about my mother. The woman who raised me by herself after Dad died. The woman who worked 3 jobs so I could play soccer and take piano lessons. The woman who took out a second mortgage to help pay for my college education. His voice was getting louder. And you told me she wasn't feeling well? You kept her away from my birthday party. She shouldn't have spent all her money on this, Vanessa shot back. That's insane behavior. That's manipulative. What's manipulative, I said quietly, is making promises you have no intention of keeping. What's manipulative is making an old woman feel worthless because she doesn't fit your image of sophistication. What's manipulative is lying to your husband for 6 months about why his mother can't move into the house he owns. Marcus looked at me and I saw tears in his eyes. Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I know you didn't, sweetheart. That's why I'm here. That's why I did this. Because I needed you to see what was happening. I needed you to understand that promises matter, that family matters, that I matter. You do. God, Mom, of course you do. You matter more than anything. Vanessa made a sound of frustration. This is ridiculous. Marcus, can we please discuss this privately? No, he said sharply. No, we can't. Because my mother just spent her entire life savings, Vanessa, on a party for me. A party you were taking credit for. A party you didn't want her at. He turned to address the gathered crowd. Everyone, I need to tell you something. This party, everything you're enjoying tonight, wasn't planned by my wife. It was planned and paid for by my mother, Judith Thorne. She spent $23,000 of her own money she doesn't have to spare, to give me this celebration. The crowd erupted in whispers. I saw people looking at me with new eyes. Some with pity, some with admiration, some with confusion. And the reason she did it, Marcus continued, his voice cracking, is because I promised to take care of her and then let her down. Because my wife lied to both of us and made my mother feel unwelcome in our home. Because I wasn't paying enough attention to see what was really happening. He turned back to me and took my hands in his. They were warm and strong, and I remembered when they'd been tiny, reaching up for me to lift him. Mom, I am so sorry. You're moving in with us. This week. I don't care what needs to be rearranged. And I'm paying you back every penny you spent on this party. Marcus, that's not why I did this. I know it's not. But I'm doing it anyway. You shouldn't have had to spend your savings on my birthday. You shouldn't have had to prove that you mattered. You've always mattered. You're my mother. Vanessa's face was like stone. So I just lose my office? My space in my own home? Marcus looked at her, and I saw something change in his expression. Something hardening. We'll talk about this later. Privately. Right now, I'm going to introduce my mother to everyone who doesn't know her. Because she should have been here from the beginning. She should have been the guest of honor. And that's what he did. For the next hour, Marcus walked me around the party, introducing me to colleagues and friends, telling them stories about how I'd raised him, how I'd sacrificed for him. People were kind, some effusively so, clearly uncomfortable with the drama but wanting to be supportive. Others were more reserved, probably friends of Vanessa's who didn't know what to make of the situation. The photographer came up and asked for a photo of Marcus and me. We stood together under the Edison lights, his arm around my shoulders, and I felt something in my chest unclench for the first time in months. The flash went off. Beautiful, the photographer said. You can really see the love there. When the party finally wound down and the last guests left, I found myself sitting on the patio with Marcus while Vanessa disappeared inside the house. The jazz quartet was packing up their instruments. The caterer's staff was clearing tables. The beautiful evening I'd created was coming to an end. I can't believe you did this, Marcus said softly. I can't believe it got so bad that you felt like you had to. I needed you to see, I replied. I needed you to understand that promises mean something. That I'm not just optional. You were never optional, Mom. Never. I trusted Vanessa to handle things. I thought she was taking care of the renovations like she said. I should have checked. I should have come to see you more. I should have noticed you were struggling. You have your own life. Your own family. You're my family. He squeezed my hand. And starting tomorrow you're moving in here. We'll figure out Vanessa's office situation. Maybe we'll convert the bonus room above the garage. Or maybe she'll need to rent space downtown. I don't know yet. But that guest suite is yours, Mom. It always should have been. The caterer approached us then, tablet in hand. Excuse me, Mrs. Thorne. I have your final invoice ready. The remaining balance is $8,200 as we discussed. How would you like to handle payment? Marcus stood up. I'll take care of that. Send the invoice to my email. He gave the caterer his business card. Oh, the caterer said, looking confused. But Mrs. Vanessa Thorne is listed as the client. I'll need her approval to change the billing. I'm her husband and I'm approving it. Send me the invoice. I'll have payment to you within 24 hours. The caterer nodded and walked away. Marcus sat back down. $23,000, Mom. Jesus. It was worth it, I said. To see your face when you realized what was happening. To hear you tell those people about me. To know that I still mattered to you. You've always mattered. I'm sorry I made you doubt that. We sat in silence for a moment, listening to the last of the cleanup happening around us. Then Marcus said, "What did you think would happen? When you planned all this, what did you think the outcome would be?" I considered that. Honestly, I wasn't sure. Part of me thought maybe you'd be angry. Maybe you'd side with Vanessa. Maybe you'd tell me I was being dramatic or manipulative like she said. But I decided it didn't matter. Because if that happened, at least I'd know. At least I'd stop waiting for something that was never going to come. And if I had sided with her, then I would have known I'd already lost you. That the son I raised was gone, replaced by someone who valued appearances over family. And I would have grieved that loss and found a way to move forward. I'm stronger than people think, Marcus. I've had to be. He pulled me into a hug then and I felt him shaking. I'm so sorry, Mom. For all of it. For making you feel like you had to do this. For not seeing what was happening. For letting 6 months go by while you were struggling and I was just not paying attention. You're paying attention now, I said gently. That's what matters. When we finally went inside, Vanessa was in the kitchen, aggressively loading the dishwasher. She didn't look up when we entered. We need to talk, Marcus said. Not tonight, Vanessa replied curtly. I'm tired and we have guests staying over. We don't have any guests staying over. Your mother. My mother is family. She's not a guest. And yes, she's staying here tonight and every night going forward until we get her properly moved in. Vanessa slammed a glass down on the counter. You're making decisions about our home without discussing them with me. Like you did about the guest suite? She had no answer to that. Marcus took a deep breath. Vanessa, I love you. You're my wife, the mother of my children. But what you did tonight, what you've been doing for months, that's not okay. You lied to me. You excluded my mother. You made her feel worthless. And you took credit for something she paid for with her life savings. I didn't ask her to do that. No, but you created the circumstances that made her feel like she had to. You told her she wasn't sophisticated enough for my party. You knew she'd been waiting 6 months to move in here. And you knew I thought the renovations were holding things up. You lied, Vanessa. To both of us. Vanessa's face crumpled slightly, and for a moment I saw something vulnerable beneath the anger. I work hard too, Marcus. I've sacrificed for this family too. I need space to do my job, space that's mine. Is that so terrible? No, he said quietly. It's not terrible. But lying about it is. Making my mother feel unwelcome is. We could have figured something out. We could have found a solution that worked for everyone. But instead, you decided unilaterally that your needs mattered more than my promises to my mother. That's not how marriage works. That's not how family works. I stepped forward. Vanessa, I don't want to be the source of problems in your marriage. If having me here is going to cause this much conflict, I can find another solution. No, Marcus said firmly. Mom, no. You're not the problem. You're not causing the conflict. The lies and the disrespect caused the conflict. And we're going to work through it, but you're staying. That's not negotiable. Vanessa looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw calculation in her eyes. She was a lawyer, used to assessing situations and finding angles. How do I know you're not going to hold this over us? That you won't use it as leverage whenever you don't get your way? Because that's not who I am, I said simply. I'm not interested in controlling anyone. I just want to be safe and warm and near my family in my final years. That's all I've ever wanted. And the money? You expect Marcus to pay you back. I expect Marcus to make his own decisions about that. If he wants to pay me back, I'll accept gratefully. If he doesn't, I'll survive. I've survived worse. Something in Vanessa's expression shifted slightly. Not softness exactly, but maybe the beginning of respect. You're tougher than I thought. Most mothers are, I replied. The next morning I woke up in the guest suite, my suite now, in a comfortable bed with clean sheets and no sound of dripping water anywhere. Sunlight streamed through windows that didn't have cracks in them. The room smelled like lavender from the diffuser someone, probably Marcus, had set up on the dresser. I lay there for a moment, feeling the weight of what I'd done settle over me. I'd spent everything. I'd created massive conflict in my son's marriage. I'd made a scene at a party full of important people. Any one of those things could have backfired spectacularly. But lying there in that comfortable bed, I couldn't bring myself to regret it. Sometimes you have to fight for your place in the world. Sometimes you have to make people see you even if it costs everything you have. Especially if it costs everything you have. There was a soft knock on the door. "Grandma!" It was Emma's voice. "Come in, sweetheart." She peeked around the door, still in her pajamas. "Dad said you're moving in with us." "I am. Is that okay with you?" She broke into a huge smile and rushed over to hug me. "It's the best. I've missed you so much. Mom keeps saying we're too busy to visit you, but I wanted to. Can you teach me how to make that carrot cake you make for Dad's birthday? The real one next week." I held my granddaughter close, breathing in the coconut scent of her shampoo. "I would love that. We'll make it together." Joshua appeared in the doorway, clutching a stuffed dinosaur. "Grandma, can you make pancakes like you used to? The ones with chocolate chips?" "Every Sunday," I promised. "If your parents say it's okay." "It's okay," Marcus said, appearing behind his son. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept much, but he was smiling. "Whatever Grandma wants, Grandma gets. At least for a while. She's earned it." Vanessa appeared in the hallway behind Marcus. She didn't come into the room, but she met my eyes. "I've arranged for movers to get your things from your house," she said stiffly. "They'll pack everything and bring it here. You shouldn't have to do that work yourself." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was something. I nodded. "Thank you, Vanessa. I appreciate that." She nodded back and disappeared down the hallway. "It's going to take time," Marcus said softly, reading my expression, "for all of us to adjust. But we'll figure it out." "I know. And Mom? I transferred $23,000 into your account this morning. Every penny you spent plus a little extra. You shouldn't have had to do that. You shouldn't have felt like you had no other option." Tears stung my eyes. "Marcus, no arguments. It's done. That money is yours. For whatever you need, whatever you want. Buy yourself new clothes. Take a vacation. Put it back in savings. I don't care. But you're never going to be in a position where you have to choose between eating and keeping the heat on. Not while I'm alive." Emma hugged me tighter. "We love you, Grandma. I love you too, sweetheart. All of you." The next few weeks were an adjustment. Moving my things from the house I'd lived in for 47 years was harder than I'd expected. Each box of packed memories felt like closing a chapter of my life. But Marcus and even Vanessa helped. She wasn't warm exactly, but she was present. She carried boxes. She asked where I wanted things arranged. She made sure the suite had everything I needed. One evening, about 2 weeks after the party, she knocked on my door after dinner. I invited her in, and she sat stiffly on the edge of the chair by the window. "I wanted to say something," she started, not meeting my eyes. "What I did, excluding you from the party, lying about the renovations, it wasn't really about you. Not specifically." I waited, letting her work through whatever she needed to say. "My mother died when I was 16, she continued. "She was not a good person. She was critical and cold and made me feel like nothing I did was ever good enough. When she got sick, I took care of her because it was expected, but I resented every minute of it. And when she died, I felt relieved. Which makes me sound like a terrible person." "It makes you sound human," I said gently. She looked at me then, surprised. "I think I've been projecting that onto you, assuming you'd be like her. Demanding and critical and taking up space I needed. It wasn't fair." "No," I agreed. "It wasn't. But I understand where it came from now." "I still need my office," she said, a little defensively. "I know. And Marcus told me you're converting the bonus room. That's a good solution. It's smaller. But it's yours. And that matters." She nodded slowly. "I'm not good at the mother-in-law thing. I'm probably never going to be the warm, fuzzy daughter-in-law who wants to do crafts and bake cookies together. That's okay. I'm not asking you to be someone you're not. I'm just asking you to be honest and respectful. We don't have to be best friends, Vanessa. We just have to be family. I can try to do that, she said after a moment. That's all anyone can ask. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. The party really was beautiful. Even with all the drama, it was the nicest event I've ever been to. You have good taste. I smiled. Thank you. I had a good reason to make it special. After she left, I sat by the window and looked out at the backyard where the party had been held. The Edison lights were still up, twinkling in the evening darkness. Marcus said he was going to leave them, that they reminded him of an important night. I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago, desperately waiting for her son to keep his promise, eating one meal a day in a house that was falling apart around her. I thought about the woman I'd been at that party, standing in the shadows watching strangers enjoy something I'd created. And I thought about the woman I was now, sitting in a comfortable room in my son's house, with a full bank account and my family around me. Sometimes the only way to be seen is to do something impossible, something dramatic, something that forces people to pay attention. I'd spent my entire life being quiet and accommodating and selfless. I'd put everyone else's needs before my own, told myself that was what good mothers did. And maybe it is to a point, but there comes a time when you have to stop waiting for other people to see your value and start showing them. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Dorothy. How's the new place? Are you settling in okay? I typed back, I'm home. Finally. And I was. Not just in a physical space but in a place where I mattered. Where I was seen. Where my son understood what I'd sacrificed for him, and was determined to honor that. The party itself became something of a legend in Marcus's social circle. People talked about it for months. The beautiful event, the dramatic revelation, the mother who spent her life savings to prove a point. Some people thought I was crazy. Others thought I was brave. Most thought I was a little bit of both. I didn't care what they thought. I'd done what I needed to do. Marcus did end up taking me out for his actual birthday on September 28th. Just the two of us, to the same diner where I used to take him as a child after his soccer games. We ordered burgers and milkshakes, and he told me stories about his childhood that I'd forgotten, moments I'd thought were insignificant but that had meant the world to him. Remember when I broke my arm falling off the jungle gym? He said. And you worked a double shift the next day so you could take the following day off to stay home with me? I remember. I was 8 years old and I remember lying on the couch watching cartoons, and you brought me tomato soup and grilled cheese cut into triangles. And I remember thinking my mom was the strongest person in the whole world. Because you were tired, I could see how tired you were, but you were there. You were always there. That's what parents do, I said. No, he replied. That's what good parents do. And you were the best. I lost sight of that somewhere along the way. I got caught up in my career and my marriage and just forgot to check on you the way you always checked on me. I'm sorry for that, Mom. I'm going to do better. You are doing better, I said. Every day. He paid the check, and when we got back to his house, there was a carrot cake on the kitchen counter with 40 candles on it. Emma and Joshua ran up to show me. They'd made it themselves with Vanessa supervising. It was a little lopsided, and the frosting was uneven, but it was perfect. We sang happy birthday. Marcus blew out his candles. And when I asked him what he wished for, he said, I already got my wish. My mom is home. That night, as I got ready for bed in my suite, I caught my reflection in the mirror. I looked older, certainly. Tired. But there was something different in my eyes. Something that hadn't been there before. I looked like a woman who'd fought for herself and won. I'd always taught my children that family was everything. That you sacrificed for the people you loved. That loyalty and commitment were the most important values. And I still believed that. But I'd learned something new in the process of fighting for my place in this family. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't sacrifice yourself into nothingness and expect anyone to value what's left. Sometimes love means standing up and saying, I matter too. My needs matter too. My life matters too. My son had said, we'll take care of you. And when that promise proved empty, I'd taken care of myself. In the most dramatic way possible. I'd spent everything I had to make a point, to force a reckoning, to demand the respect and place in my family that I deserved. And it had worked. Not because the gesture itself was important, but because it was impossible to ignore. Because it forced everyone to stop and look at me, really look at me and see what they'd been missing, see what they'd been taking for granted. I thought about all the other elderly parents out there, waiting for phone calls that don't come, waiting for visits that get canceled, waiting for promises that never materialize. I thought about all the people who've given everything to their families and find themselves alone and forgotten in their final years. If there was anything I wanted them to know from my story, it was this: you have value. Your life matters. Your presence matters. And if the people around you can't see that, sometimes you have to make them see it. I didn't advocate for everyone to spend their life savings on parties. That would be foolish advice. But I did advocate for standing up, for speaking out, for refusing to fade quietly into the background just because you're old or inconvenient or not sophisticated enough. I'd raised my son to be strong and successful. I'd given him every advantage I could manage. And in the end, he'd come through for me. But only after I forced him to see what was happening. Only after I refused to be invisible anymore. That was the real lesson. Not that dramatic gestures solve everything, but that you have to be willing to fight for your place in the world. Even when you're tired. Even when you're scared. Even when it costs everything you have. Especially then. As I climbed into bed that night, I thought about the $23,000 Marcus had returned to me. It was sitting in my bank account. A safety net I'd never expected to have again. But more than the money, I had something I valued even more. I had my dignity. I had my place in my family. I had my son's respect and understanding. I had proven that an elderly woman with nothing left to lose could still move mountains when she decided to. And that was worth everything. The story didn't end there, of course. Life kept going. Vanessa and I developed a cordial, if not warm, relationship. She respected me more after seeing what I was capable of, and I respected her willingness to try to do better. We'd never be close, but we'd found a way to coexist that worked. Emma and I did make that carrot cake together for Marcus's real birthday. We made it every year after that, in fact. It became our tradition. Joshua and I started having Saturday morning pancake sessions, where he'd tell me about dinosaurs and superheroes while I flipped chocolate chip pancakes. I got to be present for school plays and soccer games and piano recitals. I got to be grandma in the daily, normal way I'd always wanted, helping with homework, reading bedtime stories, just being there. Marcus checked on me constantly those first few months, almost obsessively, making sure I had everything I needed, asking if I was comfortable, if I was happy, if there was anything else he could do. Eventually, I had to tell him to relax. "I'm not going anywhere," I assured him. "And I'm not going to punish you forever for a mistake you've already fixed. We're okay, sweetheart. We really are." He hugged me tight. "I just don't want you to ever feel like you did before. Ever again." "I won't. You've made sure of that." And he had. Not just by giving me a place to live, but by seeing me. By acknowledging what I'd done for him, what I'd sacrificed, what I was worth. That was what I'd really been fighting for all along. Not a room in his house, but recognition. Respect. Value. I still thought about that moment sometimes, standing in the shadows of the party I'd created, watching people celebrate something I'd made, but they didn't know about. I thought about the fear I'd felt, the uncertainty, the wild gamble I'd taken. Could have gone so differently. Marcus could have sided with Vanessa. He could have been angry at me for causing a scene, for embarrassing him in front of his colleagues. The whole thing could have backfired spectacularly, and left me even more alone than before. But it hadn't. Because underneath all the disappointment and hurt, my son was still the boy I'd raised. Still the person who valued family and honesty and doing the right thing. I just had to remind him of that. Had to make him see what he'd been missing while he was caught up in his own life. That's what children do, they get caught up. They get busy with their own lives and families and careers, and they forget that their parents are still people with needs and feelings and lives of their own. It's not malicious, usually. It's just human nature. But it's also human nature to fight back when you're being erased. To stand up and say, "No, I'm still here. I still matter." And that's what I'd done. A year after the party, Marcus came to me with an idea. "Mom, I've been thinking. What if we set up a foundation? Something that helps elderly people who are in situations like you were. Who are struggling financially or living in dangerous conditions or just forgotten." I looked at him surprised. "A foundation? Yeah, we could call it the Judith Thorne Foundation. We could help with housing repairs, utility bills, medical expenses. Whatever people need to age with dignity. I'd fund it myself, but I'd want you involved. Making decisions about who we help and how. I felt tears prick my eyes. Marcus, that's a beautiful idea. You shouldn't have had to do what you did, he said. But since you did, and since it worked out, maybe we can use that story to help other people. Show them they're not alone. Show them there are people who care. I'd love to be part of that. And so we did. The Judith Thorne Foundation started small, helping a handful of elderly people in our community with urgent needs. But it grew. Marcus told the story at fundraisers, the dramatic tale of his mother spending her life savings on his birthday party to prove a point. People were moved. They donated. The foundation expanded. Within 3 years we were helping dozens of families. Within 5 years we'd helped hundreds. We partnered with social workers and community organizations to identify people who were falling through the cracks. We paid for roof repairs and furnace replacements and medical bills. We helped people age in their homes with dignity. And every person we helped, I thought of that version of myself, the woman eating 1 meal a day in a leaking house, wondering if her son still loved her. I thought of how desperate and alone I'd felt. And I was grateful that we could prevent other people from reaching that point. The foundation became my purpose. I went to every board meeting, reviewed every application, sometimes even visited the people we were helping to make sure they had what they needed. It gave my final years meaning beyond just being grandma. Though that role was precious to me too. When I turned 80, Marcus threw me a surprise party. A real one this time, where I was the guest of honor. It was at the same house, in the same backyard, with many of the same people who'd attended his 40th birthday party 5 years earlier. But this time everyone knew who I was. Everyone knew my story. And when Marcus stood up to make a toast, talking about my strength and resilience and the foundation that had grown from one dramatic gesture, people stood and applauded. I looked around at all those faces, some I knew well now, others still acquaintances, and I felt something I'd never quite felt before. Not just love or gratitude or even satisfaction. I felt seen. Completely, fully, undeniably seen. That was what I'd been fighting for all along. That was what the party had really been about. Not revenge or manipulation or even justice, though it had elements of all those things. It was about refusing to be invisible. About demanding to be seen and valued and remembered. About standing up and saying, I'm still here, and I still matter, and you will acknowledge that. My son had said, we'll take care of you. And when that promise proved hollow, I'd taken care of myself. I'd taken care of the situation. I'd taken care of ensuring that I would never again be forgotten or dismissed or left alone to struggle. I'd taken care of everything. And in doing so, I'd not only secured my own place in my family, but I'd created something that would help others secure their places too. Something that would outlast me and continue fighting for elderly people who felt invisible and forgotten. That party, that shocking gesture, that desperate gamble, it had rippled outward in ways I never could have imagined. It had changed my life, changed my relationship with my son, and eventually changed the lives of hundreds of other people. All because I'd refused to accept being forgotten. All because I'd decided I was worth fighting for. All because I'd spent everything I had to prove a point that desperately needed proving. My son had promised to take care of me, and eventually he did. But first I had to take care of myself. I had to show him, show everyone that I was still there, still strong, still someone who mattered. And I had. God, how I had.